Hi there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome to Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human with Hidden Depths. And I'm very proud to say that today we have one of our long-term members, Mr. Paul Baker, in the studio, in the Zoom studio with us today. Welcome, Paul. Lovely to have you here on the call.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Fantastic. And what I'm really looking forward to today is a lot of people within our community know you as being synonymous with the phrase that we use an awful lot in Collaboration Global, systemic win. So what I'm really looking forward to doing is unpicking all of that and finding out how it can impact the people that are listening to us today, but also how our subconscious can be impacted by it as well. And whilst we don't want to date where we are necessarily in this podcast, we cannot help but talk about the current situation in the coronavirus and how that can be impacted by systemic win as well. But we'll come to that later. First and foremost, tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you to Collaboration Global? What brings you to this stage in life where you have this passion that is systemic win? And how are you coping in the current situation? Are you self-isolating at the moment?
Okay, great. Actually, I want to start with just an invitation, which is, would you like to create some systemic win with me in this conversation?
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Because that's the first thing about systemic win. It's a conscious decision to improve things together, and not just for you and me, but for everything, all those around.
Not by accident, by design.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, love it. Well, let's design that then. That's systemic win coming right up.
So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I really care about our environment and the future that we're creating. And so I did 87, a long time ago, I realized that, I didn't know whether science and technology was going to be the answer to everything, as it seemed to claim, or whether all the doom and gloom about the environment was going to be the end of everything. And what I found was that whichever side I was listening to seemed completely convincing.
Yeah.
And I sort of completely bought into it. And there was a United Nations report called Our Common Future. And in it, they basically said that the one world that we live in doesn't have the institutions. They're not set up to look after our one world. They're all sort of competing with each other. So I thought, that's interesting. How do we actually, and they named a lot of challenges, including global warming. And we had a little conference in Bristol, and Oxfam and the Quakers and World Development Movement and the local MP all met, and nothing came out of it. And I thought, what can if I just say I'm an ordinary individual who I don't know very many influential people. I'm not particularly intelligent. I'm not particularly, I haven't got loads and loads of money, all that sort of stuff. What can I as an ordinary individual do? I mean, you could say, well, I've got to become powerful and rich and influential, and then then the world can become sustainable. But we can't all do that. We're all just, we're just ourselves. So I thought, what can the ordinary individual do? What do I need to know about myself, about the world, about other people, how it all works? So I've spent since then, so I guess that's 30 odd years now.
87, yeah.
No, anyway, it's getting on.
Long time, yeah.
I've been on an amazing adventure, exploring all sorts of different things to be able to answer that question. You're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, from what you're saying, I mean, it really epitomizes what a lot of people experience, where they go to something when they're full of hope, and they see that, you know, Greenpeace is going to be there and the local MP is going to be there and all these, you know, this amazing meeting that was happening, and you had a very flat statement of nothing came out of it. And that's just so common, or more common than it should be, when people don't seem to take the reins and go, come on then, what can we do about it? So was that the kind of connection that you saw with Collaboration Global when you came along to a meeting and you saw people that, even if they weren't necessarily doing something big and rah-rah at that time, they had the want, the need to be able to make an impact and to make a difference to our world?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, the moment I heard about you, it was like, how can I not go and join that group? You know, they're trying to collaborate. That's obviously somewhere where I belong.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I think collaboration is one part of it, but I would say I've been thinking a lot about how people, well, even creatures interact. And I think our behavior is three elements. Mainly what we do is we ignore. Yeah, there's just too much to notice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ignoring.
Yeah.
And then and some of it is, you know, we ignore the cat or whatever it is, you know, because it's ignoring, it's not relevant at the moment. But then we compete and we collaborate. And I think everything is a balance of ignoring, competing, and collaborating. And so I'm really interested, but the collaboration is the one that we seem to underestimate how important it is. Competition is really good in the right time, but it can also be really problematic.
Yeah. Again,
anyway,
like most things, it depends how it's tackled at the time, because I know a lot of people will be sitting listening to this going, well, collaboration's a load of rubbish because I've done that and it didn't work and it was terrible because of this and this and this. And their identity around collaboration is that it doesn't work. And the same with people around competitiveness or being in competition. If they have suffered at the hands of competition, they will think it isn't any good. But also, if they have triumphed in the space of competition, they will think it's good. I mean, everyone points to the 4-minute mile, don't they? It's impossible. You cannot possibly do it. Your eyes will pop out of your body and you won't be able to make it happen. And then, you know, lo and behold, he did it. Bannister did it. And then over the next week or two, wasn't it? So many other people did it as well.
Yeah, certainly not long afterwards, you know, became perfectly possible.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So therefore competition is a good thing, but there is no black and white or good or bad in all of this. I think the more you can see competitiveness in a positive light, and the more you can see collaboration in a positive light, rather than the paradigm that you're viewing it from, the easier it is to understand how much of an impact both of those things can have on the rest of humanity and the rest of our society. So when you talk about some of the things that you're looking at and how you understand things, when I first got involved with collaboration, I went reading crazy. I went, you know, looked at all the different things and researched it and looked at society over history and realized how we behave and the manner in which we come together and become one, and what we can achieve from one person on their own can hardly achieve anything in comparison to when people come together to create collaboratively.
I mean, if you look at our ancient history, it's very strange. Apparently 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens was one of the most insignificant forms of humans. And Neanderthals and others have been around for far longer and were far more successful. And the Neanderthals had bigger brains and were bigger bodies and was bigger and stronger than us. And then suddenly we emerged. And because we could collaborate on a scale that they couldn't, we actually wiped them all out. We wiped all the other human species out. So, you know, our success is because we collaborate.
Yeah.
At the same time, sometimes we use that collaboration to do horrible things. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about sort of competition, you could say the negative side of competition was something like war. In a war, well, you have lots of collaboration internally. Your army, there's a great sort of team of people and all the rest of it. And the side in which the internal collaboration is bad is probably the side that's going to lose. But the problem with the competition in the war is you could say one side wins, the other side loses. But it's all the collateral damage, it's all the other harm that gets done. So you could say overall, lives are lost, resources are lost, land is damaged, buildings are damaged. The whole thing is actually an overall lose, even though there's a winner.
Mm.
And that contrasts so well with the one talking about running the 4-minute mile, where everyone was actually a winner. He broke the record, but then it lifted everyone, and everyone actually then became more able.
Yeah, there was literally nobody that was a loser in that, was there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and well, apart from the person that put the bet on the guy that came second, maybe. But yeah,
I'm not sure they actually had a race. I think it was just a great thing. But anyway, so there really wasn't a loser on that one.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, then. So start from the beginning. We've talked generally about systemic win, and but give us the definition and how you've come to this space of where you are now. So tell us, to the average Joe, what is systemic win?
Okay, I'm going to give you a completely impossible definition, first of all, which you can ignore.
Okay.
I'll stumble over it.
So someone will go, wow, that's genius. And the rest of us will be like, what?
Think, hey, that was bad. Yeah. So it's the conscious decision to create a context of positive sum games, regardless of the zero sum and negative sum games that are otherwise being played. Okay. It's impossible. No one's going to understand. So
you understand it.
Yeah, but it's taken me 20 years to understand that.
Well, there you go. So I don't feel so bad now when I'm sitting there going, what on earth? Can you put it in English for us? What does that mean in English?
Okay. So in some ways, systemic win began with me hearing about the idea that you should go for win-win rather than win-lose. Stephen Covey and all that sort of thing. And part of me said, yeah, but there's something missing. And I suppose what I'm aware is that sometimes two people or sides that are very organized, they can collaborate together. But actually they're collaborating to really take advantage or to really sort of put down others. So just because there's a win or two of us are winning doesn't mean that the whole thing is winning. And that's why I thought, well, so is it win-win-win? I win, you win, and our mates win as well.
Yeah.
But in the end, actually, and this is the dreaded word, system or systemic, because everything is a system. It's a system and a system and a system. Our body is a whole system. Our heart's a whole system. The family is a whole system. Society, wherever you look, you'll see levels of system.
Yeah.
So it's the system that has the win. I depend. We can't live on our own. We need society. We need the environment. So that's why it's a systemic win. I win, you win. Though everything in the environment that's important to us wins. And there's going to be some losing. But overall, it's a pathway of things getting better and better for everyone. Yeah,
I mean, as long as it's going in the right direction. I don't know if I don't think you utilize a spiral anymore. Do you used to talk about spirals? But it is the least damage that can be affected, isn't it? It's like going back to the war analogy. That's probably not a great analogy to look at. But
let's just play with it, because to say what you're going to say, if you use the war analogy.
So if you use the war analogy, there are the winners, the victors of the spoils. So they obviously are going to have a win. And then maybe there are the oppressed on the opposite side who weren't happy with the leader that they had. So they now feel that they don't have to follow him anymore because they've now got somebody else that they can follow. So they potentially could win. And the fact that the war has been won means that normal life then resumes. So the people that are not directly affected, not fighting the war, but are the civilians within it, they can go back to what is a normal life. So therefore they potentially have a win.
It's a really good example because if you contrast what happened after the First World War and the Second World War, in the First World War, what happened is the French and the British, and people have to forgive me, my history is rather being a bit approximate here, but we really made the Germans suffer. The German people weren't responsible for what their Kaiser did. They couldn't stop. He took them to war.
Yeah.
But there were massive reparations, and it was the German people that suffered for what their leaders had done. And the result of that was actually, in the end, the rise of Hitler. And So you could say there was a nice win-win between the French and the British, and the Germans, because they deservedly lost. But actually what happened was, in their losing, we created the conditions in which Hitler emerged and brought them back together again. So, and that led to the Second World War. There was the Cold War. You could say 100 years later, we're still in the lose. Some of it is the lose of that win-win in the First World War.
Yeah.
Now, but on the other hand, if you contrast that with the Second World War, at the end of it, Germany wasn't crushed. They were given a whole lot of aid. Japan wasn't crushed. They were given a whole lot of aid. And in fact, they were in some ways given more help than some of the winners, some of the people on the winning side.
Yeah.
But so that's an example. It does actually show how in a war, if you actually behave, the winners can behave in a way that actually lifts everyone. So, but then we had the problems of communism and so on. So it was more complicated.
Yes, it is more complicated, but it gives you an idea that, yeah. So what you're saying is, in any scenario, no matter how big or how small, if you're consciously working towards a win-win-win, then
or a systemic win, yes.
then what's not to like? Why would you not do that?
Well, you see, that's the question that I've been really puzzling for a long time, because I've been offering this to lots of people, and everyone said, "Yeah, that's really nice," but no one is seeing quite how practical it is.
Right.
And saying, "Well, how do we apply this?" So hopefully that's part of what we're going to explore today.
Well, I was just going to say, can you bring it down into more everyday level then? How might I experience it as a going about my everyday job and finding out I guess within disagreements or arguments or that kind of thing, if you're kind of consciously trying to turn on to how can I make it better for this person, even though they're driving me up the wall or they've said something that's upset me. Is that the kind of thing where you really take it down to individual incidences?
Yeah, I mean, well, you could say one of the things we need to look and say, what do we mean by winning and losing?
Right.
And again, it's a little bit big picture, but as we get the details, it'll become more obvious. But if I make my environment worse, or what's in it, and that will include you. So if I've just had an argument with you and I'm upset with you, so I go and scratch your car or something silly, whatever it is. I've undermined the relationship. I've damaged what's in my environment, what's in your environment, and it's actually a harder place to collaborate from. So when you lose, what you do is you damage something important in your environment, or it could be even the whole environment if it's a war or nuclear war or something. So it then makes it much more difficult for the other person to react well to.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're disagreeing, and I then start being really rude and unpleasant to you because I'm upset, it's really hard for you to then react well to me. So that's losing is doing something that damages the environment or some part of the environment. While winning isn't, I've just won and you've lost. Winning is actually my environment's improved. The whole situation and what's in it's improved. That includes you and what's important to you. So that's what, to me, true winning is a better environment in which all of us are going to react better, not worse.
So it's about the energy that you're emitting as well, because if you're saying one thing but actually meaning another or doing another, that's not going to fulfill the whole remit. It's got to be, so I could be going, all right then, you can do that, but I'm resenting that scenario. So the atmosphere, the energy that I'm giving off isn't a win, even though technically I'm giving you something that you would want, but because I'm resentful of it, it doesn't constitute systemic win.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I do remember it stuck with me once you said that before we knew about gravity, we didn't know how to test it. We didn't know how to work with it. We didn't understand it. But as soon as somebody was able to give it a name, it was able to be a thing, and then we could work with that. And the same, you believe, could be said for systemic win. When people understand it and it's identified and it's acknowledged, then we can start measuring and looking at how we can improve and how we can consciously take those steps. So have you, in any space, been able to experiment with people along the way to say, right, okay, this project here, we're now going to look at in a systemic win fashion to make sure that the whole picture becomes improved? Have you had an opportunity to go down that road?
That's what I'm constantly trying to do. And it's amazingly, well, you see, I think it's very to the point, bringing this thing about naming. Because until something has a name, in some ways it doesn't actually exist. There's some people know about it, some people don't, a thing called anti-fragile that some people talk about. And they basically say, we don't really have a word for something that you give it a bit of you stress it a bit and actually it gets better. Now, we do that all the time. Someone's an athlete, they stress themselves, they get out of breath, they really push themselves, their muscles ache, but they keep doing it and they get better breath, better muscles. And with living things, that stimulus is absolutely crucial for very good development. Now, with objects, you can't sort of, if you were sending a package, say, and you said, oh, this is not just strong, not just resilient, chuck it around and it will get better. What do we call that? I mean, so a man called Nassim Taleb calls it anti-fragile.
Right.
It's not, we don't always have a word that's the opposite of fragile. Take care of it, be very careful with it. Well, this is actually challenge it, give it some difficulty. It will grow better.
Yeah.
So there's so many things actually in our worlds that if you don't have a name for it, you don't really engage with it in the same way that's why, I mean, I chose systemic win. It's a bit of a clunky name, but it does describe what it actually is once you understand it.
I think so, yeah. I mean, from the point of view, if you think carefully about the world and the world we live in, everything, as you say, it's a bit like maths is everywhere, the systems are everywhere, you can't be off of it. And once you that becomes part of your psyche, you can then understand the system that you are damaging when you are not living in a systemic win state of mind. Yeah. But it is a very it doesn't happen overnight. You have to really work at it, don't you, to keep.
Let me give you an example, because thinking about things as a game, some people say, oh, games are just unimportant. Well, no, I would say you can describe everything as a game.
Yeah.
The game of life, Games can be very, very serious, or they can be lots of fun and they don't really matter. But that's the whole range of it. But football is quite an interesting example. If you think about it, it's not one game. So, for instance, if I'm playing football, at some point I've got the ball at my feet. So the first game is an internal game, which is to actually control my body so I can control the ball. The next level of the game is I want to get the ball, keep the ball away from the opposite team and get it to one of my team members, and eventually we're going to get in the net of the opposite side. So that's the next level up of the game. Above that, there's at the end of the time, one side will have more goals than the other, so they will have won. So that's a different level of game. Then there's the level of the game to win the championship or to win whichever thing it is. And then somewhere beyond all of that, there is the game that we used. It's much better to play football than to do tribal warfare.
Right. So
what tribes used to do is, they regularly had fights with neighboring tribes. And people got killed. Lots of people got killed. So we're still tribal. Part of us is still tribal. But what we've learned is you can actually have you've turned it into football or rugby or lots of other sports. And there's far more of the competition that people are actually collaborating. Everyone's collaborating to follow the rules. We've agreed to have referees so that you don't, things don't get out of hand and people don't beat themselves each other up or kill them or whatever it is. And so we've actually created a situation where we're all more able to collaborate. So you could say the biggest game of football or rugby or whichever one you happen to fancy is to actually have more people collaborate, be able to be in a competitive environment, support their team. But we don't go to war, we don't hurt each other, and actually the game gets better and better.
Mm.
And that's the positive sum game, that's systemic win. But the systemic win is to do it consciously. I mean, a question I can ask you is, how often do you think of saying, am I playing a positive sum game at the moment? I wouldn't think you've ever asked yourself that question. Once or twice maybe. You're quite exceptional.
Not necessarily in those words, but I think some people of faith would be asking themselves those questions, because they would have a belief to be making the world a better place. Leave it better than you found it kind of philosophy. But everyone is human, and it is human to err, as they say. And so I would imagine it's difficult for them to consciously do it every single day. I mean, it's a pretty Mother Teresa maybe was that person that would be consciously getting up, praying, and making sure that every action she took was going to be for the benefit of other people.
You see, I'm going to say it shouldn't be for the. Well, the first thing is, and this again is one of my concepts, which is if you don't look after yourself, you can't sustain looking after anyone else. So all the people who are terribly altruistic and self-sacrificing, you can't keep it up, and in the end you'll let down the people who you really want to care for. Right. So I again I would say you shouldn't be selfish, and you shouldn't be you shouldn't be self-sacrificing. You should be genuinely self-interested, which means you actually need to be systemically self-interested. You need to be caring about your present self, your future self, the future self of those who you depend on, who depend on you, who you really care about. So, we do need to be properly self-interested in the long term, not just in the short term.
So what practices do you have for yourself to make those conscious decisions about being self-interested and to be searching for that systemic win in whatever you do?
Okay, I noticed I go into an enormous panic the moment you asked that question. The thing about systemic win is that it's actually very hard to do on your own.
Right.
Now, in the end, we've got to do it on our own, because we aren't just one. We've got all our different sides to us. You've got the person who's got a partner. You're the person who does business. The person who's does stuff in the community. We've got all these different sides to us. So in the end, they've all got to collaborate. But to begin with, it's harder to do it on your own. And lots of us are quite harsh on ourselves internally. The levels of self-criticism and judgment and things like that. So one of my things is to remember to be kinder to myself. Remember that it's more important to learn from a mistake than to beat myself up.
I like that. Yeah.
But it's also trying to get a bigger picture. So rather than just, it's the old thing. You can't solve a problem from the same level that created it. If you're in the middle of the game, you don't understand the game. You've got to be able to step back from it. So that's one of the things I'm quite good at doing, is to step back from it and to get a better perspective. But I've also got to know when to step in and absolutely just be involved and not worry about all that stuff, and just show up and be present and be myself as best I can.
Yeah. That's
a good enough answer. I think I've skirted around it a bit.
Well, one of the things you said is you need systemic win to be able to collaborate, and to be able to collaborate, you need systemic win.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes round and round, doesn't it? And I like the fact that you say you've got to be kind to yourself. Do you have a kind of like so as I'm completing the latest book on collaboration and kind of explanation of how to go about it, do you find and I've got kind of guidelines and mindset behaviors around how to collaborate. Do you find that be kind or be kinder to yourself put your oxygen mask on first, be self-interested as opposed to selfish. Do you find that you have a criteria, is that the right word, a kind of list? I'm coming across in the wrong way, but do you have...
Well, okay, I'll give you an answer while we're thinking about what the question is.
Okay. I like that, thank you.
So one of the things I do at the end of every day is I think, what am I grateful for during the day? And so I also then notice what are the things I'm less than grateful, even resentful about.
Okay.
And then I think, well, what would it take to become more grateful for what actually happened? And so it's really interesting. So how long or short is my list is really interesting. And if I actually stay with it, the things that initially I was not very happy with, because I'm looking at it from a distance and I'm looking at it through a lens of gratitude, I can begin to see actually how there's a contribution, there's a value in it.
Right.
Even if it was pretty unpleasant or difficult at the time.
Yeah.
So that's a really, I suppose I used to do Tai Chi and things like that. And there's a sort of an attitude of working with what happens rather than fighting against it.
Yes.
It's like using the energy. So if a punch comes towards you, you sort of guide it past you rather than try to block it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's the same sort of thing. You know, I might be initially a bit resentful, which is a bit like sort of blocking the punch, rather than sort of using its energy and then taking it past me.
Utilizing it.
To go where I want to go to.
I like that. How long is your list, whether it's gratitude or being resentful? And I do remember times in the past when we've had conversations and you've said, I don't know what I think about that right now. I'll have to go and have a think about it. And it's that kind of space of, you've obviously felt some reaction to it, to what was being said, but you've not reacted. You're going to go away and think about it and then respond. Which I think in this day and age, in the social media world that we live in, that's really hard for a lot of people to do, isn't it? They just quick, I'm going to blame you. You're at fault. This person's an idiot. Oh, everyone's out there, panic buying, and it's all their fault. And then you find out the full story is that, well, actually the shops aren't able to cope because the way they work, all the goods aren't in storage in the shop. They have to be shipped in, and so when the shelves are empty, there's no one to fill them up until the next day. And so it gives you the illusion that everyone is panic buying. That actually that's not the case. And so I like what you said. You kind of have a list of gratitude, and you want to have more on that list than the other list, which is when you're resentful of something.
Well, it's just what's the process of flipping it off one list and be able to find a place for it on the other side.
Yeah.
But and it was one of the things that many things I studied was the Alexander technique, and I'm a teacher of that occasionally. And one of their big things is what they call inhibition, which is to pause. You wait. You don't immediately do something. And Viktor Frankl had a big thing about the importance of the gap between stimulus and response. It's where your choice lies.
Yes. So
it's that ability to not just be reactive. And again, I'm going to keep bringing things back into the systemic win part of it, which is that's where we can really help each other. If I'm being reactive and I trust you say, hang on, Paul, you're being rather reactive. No, I'm not, piss off, whatever it is. But but actually, that's where we can really help each other, because some of the time we're just on automatic and our automatic isn't that great. And we're not being very self-conscious, we're not being very aware, and we haven't got to the point where we can actually pause or slow down. And that's where it's really valuable to be able to, if you've got other people, particularly if you trust them, even if you don't like what they're saying, hang on, I like this person, I trust this person, I should, and all that slows it down.
Yeah. So on a slightly different bent, talking about pausing and slowing down, the world is currently pausing and slowing down. They're having to pause and slow down. Do you see this as an opportunity for you to give people the tools to utilize, to use in order to create within their system for themselves that calm, that systemic win within them?
I mean, I think if we had systemic win awareness in our leadership at the moment, we wouldn't be in this situation. And if we had systemic win in the general population, we wouldn't be in this situation.
How do you see it differing then?
Well, one of the things that's happening is we don't know what's happening.
Right.
And lots of different experts are saying very different things. And part of the problem is they don't know what's happening. So there's a lot of not knowing what's happening. There's a lot of fear going around. And people, when you're in fear, you react, you react habitually. And if your habitual reaction isn't actually appropriate, you're going to make the situation worse, not better. I mean, so, for instance, there's lots of training. People have been trained for the military. They have to learn to behave in very non-habitual ways to stay safe in the battle. If they just behaved habitually, they'd be dead in a very short period of time. So we've got to learn, if you're in a very natural Stone Age situation, our reactions maybe are quite helpful. In a highly complex society like we are now, primitive reactions are really unhelpful. So, when you don't know what's going on, it's so easy. I just got to do something. Oh, it looks as though there's going to be a crisis. I better buy some more food. Again, it's just a very natural thing. I better have some more and start. And then people say, "Oh, they're panic buying," and it's really unkind to do that. But it's also, I suppose you could say another way you could look at the coronavirus stuff is at one point people were saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's irrelevant to us. It'll all be okay." And then suddenly say, "No, it's not all right." If your leaders say it's all right and then they tell them it's not all right, well, you should panic.
Should you?
Yeah. But, I mean, when I say panic, but you should be really concerned.
Seriously,
you've trusted your leaders. You said it's all right, and then suddenly they say it's not all right. Well, what are you then meant to do when you've suddenly discovered what you thought was all right isn't all right?
So, from what you're saying, whether our leaders, who are also human, and also probably don't know what's going on, or don't know, does anybody know what's going on specifically? But if 10 years ago we had brought into our psyche the same way that, say, 20 years ago we weren't talking about coaching in this world, we weren't talking about Tai Chi or Qigong or meditation, or 20 years ago it's like, what, you're not meditating, what are you doing that rubbish for? Now it's like, oh, don't you meditate? Oh, that's really how it calms me. So it's like, what's 20 years ago wasn't normal. If we had, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, systemic win had been dropped into our psyche, and we'd been able to go, okay, that's weird. And then 10 years ago we go, no, that's what I'm going to start doing. And then currently we're in that place, the same as if you're isolating yourself, you should be meditating to support your good mental health. If we had systemic win as an everyday kind of thing, as much as meditation is, do you see this pandemic crisis? They always use such emotive words, don't they? Pandemic crisis. Do you see that? And I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just saying that it's a scary thing to say. But if we had systemic win around this, do you believe that the way people would be reacting and responding would be from a different viewpoint? Do you think they would have been going, oh, I think I should stay home because that's the best thing for everybody?
Yeah, but we'd have also had a lot of time to think about staying at home. I mean, so for instance, months ago was when it first started to say something's happening in China. And it was supposed to be very infectious. And I just thought, okay, if something's very infectious, the Chinese, like the rest of us, they travel around. How can that possibly, and they fly on aeroplanes everywhere, how can that possibly not spread around the world? It was just like, to me, it was absolutely obvious it was going to spread.
Yeah.
But no one paid any, it seemed to be virtually no one paid any attention. And so we've just wasted an incredible amount of time. They could have started building ventilators at the end of last year.
Yeah. Maybe they were, we don't know. But as far as you're concerned, if people had an awareness of systemic win and had been taught how to practice it and taught how to consciously make those kind of choices, do you think we would be seeing a very different kind of outbreak now?
Yeah, because, well, for a start, we wouldn't be in the middle of panic buying. We'd be much more interested in helping each other. I mean, there's a lot of community sort of spirit that seems to be breaking out. But in systemic win, you really care about what's happening to your neighbors and your neighbors' neighbors, because they're in your environment. If they're doing badly, it's going to have we're not isolated. Our money and all our technology sometimes makes us feel like we can be isolated, but we're not. So if we were all, if we'd had some time to really plan together about how we'd be preparing for this, it'd be very different to, first of all, being told it's all fine, it's good, and then suddenly, no, you've got to lock down all of this thing. So half the people don't want to believe it, half the people are just wanting to carry on as normal, and we're not necessarily very good at reading into the future. But I think in the end, systemic win is going to be about the details of a particular, how do we collaborate in a particular situation? And you see, I'd contrast it with what I call non-systemic win, which is we're just carrying on as normal. Sometimes we cooperate, sometimes we don't cooperate. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we get over our fights. It's another part of my background. I've done a lot of mediation training, work with mediation, work with restorative justice. And a very interesting thing, if you think, where does a conflict start? As far as I can see, the very beginning of a conflict is someone does something that they think they may be really blind and not thinking right, but they actually think it's going to improve things. And then someone else doesn't like what they think is going to improve it, and they resist it. And that's where it always starts with someone doing something. I mean, I've never met anyone who does, even though they've been destructive, it still feels like they're still trying to improve something. I can remember being really young and angry and wanting to break a branch off a tree or something like that. But I was trying to do it because I wanted to feel better, to discharge my emotions. It wasn't a very good way of doing it. But I've never been able to think of anything that, if you look at the core of it, the person isn't trying to improve something. And that to me is what's amazing about human beings, is we're incredible at improving things. And what I'm surprised at is how little we help each other improve things.
Do you not think sometimes their definition of improving things is what's in it for me, and they're coming from a place of ego?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's why I say the self-interest needs to be much more than selfishness. Selfishness is the sort of, I don't want to be unkind to 2-year-olds, but 2-year-old just wants what they want right now. There's nothing else they're thinking about, and they'll throw a tantrum and hold their breath till they turn blue or whatever it is to get it.
Yeah.
There's no future. There's just, I want this now, and I'm going to put everything. And it's amazing how often us as adults get triggered into the depressingly similar behavior. Maybe slightly prettified, but not very much. And so that's the difference between being selfish and self-interested, and then genuinely self-interested.
So do you find, knowing what you know around systemic win and conscious choice, that you find that you don't have the temper tantrums, you don't kind of have the conflict with people how you might have done 10 or 15 years ago? I'm
better than I used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
work
a journey.
In progress. Yeah.
Work in progress. One of the biggest thing about systemic win is it really is going to work best when you have 3 people.
Okay.
Because
magic 3.
Yeah, threes are really important. And there's also a cycle, I think, that is really important to think about, which is we're always doing something. Now, you could say, if you're a very simple creature and forget being human, you don't do much reviewing, you don't do much planning. You just do what you do, and your doing is your knowing. There's no difference between what you know and what you do. We're now much better at reviewing, of understanding, of seeing and making sense of things. So after we've done something, it's a really good idea to review it and just check out what's happening in the environment around you. And then we plan. So there's an ongoing process. You know, there are three types of doing. There's just the unconscious, automatic, reactive doing. There's the doing, which is to review, to contextualize, to make sense of what's happening, which gives you the information you then need to plan for the things that are like to come up. So there's that constant do, review, plan. And the other thing about the doing is some of the doing is not doing anything at all. It's called resting.
Yeah.
But we need to see where we are in that cycle. But our awareness is limited. We need others to help us with our awareness.
Yes.
And the other thing is, there's a lot of stuff we do, you know, in pairs of two people with couples and things. But it's great when you're collaborating. But when you start to get into some sort of competition or fight, it's very hard. You know, you get polarized, and that's where you need the mediator, the facilitator, the person who. You see, I'm going to say they shouldn't be neutral. They should be caring about the whole system. They should care about themselves and the whole system that the two people are. So they're not taking sides. They're wanting it to be better. So, I mean, if a couple are fighting, the mediator is perhaps more concerned about how their kids are than actually how those two people are. But they want to help those two people get to a point where they're back to behaving in a way that their kids do okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'd like to have a full disclosure here and say that I've been through your process that you have put together, the sort of do, review, plan, and identifying that there were not only just three people in the conversation, and your role was to, as you say, be above and make sure everyone was looked after, but you also implemented that everybody had supporters as well. So it wasn't just like you had people supporting you, I had people supporting me, the other person had people supporting them. So we had the opportunity for everyone to kind of have a glance around the corner at, oh, well, they think that, oh, that's really interesting, I hadn't seen it like that before. It wasn't just two people at loggerheads with each other with no way of finding a solution, and solutions came out that I hadn't seen, I hadn't been aware of, I hadn't considered, and you were able to kind of shine lights on different places. And it wasn't a quick fix by any stretch of the imagination, but I still find personally that I'm getting value from the whole process, because my instinct is to, come on, let's get this sorted, move on, let's get on with it. And actually, if I'd done that in the way that I'd wanted to do it, and if the other person had gone, okay, let's do it Jill's way, I would have been damaged in the long run, and they would have been damaged in the long run. So because of what you brought to the process, the do, review, and the plan, and the support network that you put around it, made me actually, against my natural instinct, was difficult for me, but I was able to kind of, okay then, all right, let's think a bit in a different way. And I had other people kind of go, well, that's really interesting, what about that? And that's really interesting, what about that? And so the conclusion that we came to isn't what I had set out for by any stretch of the imagination, but in hindsight, 20/20 vision, it's the best thing that could have ever happened for me. So it was really interesting.
And I'm going to add to that one is because the other person didn't really collaborate, didn't really play as much as they might have. And despite that, we did pretty well.
Yeah.
But, you know, we certainly avoided it going really badly wrong, which you could have easily done. But so it was a nice example of, even if someone else is a bit locked onto a particular position, you can still make some good progress.
Yeah.
And again, in some ways, you know, we got into it in the middle of the crisis, and then maybe we could have started it a few months earlier, and it would have been easier.
Yeah.
It was almost like it was already boiling before we started.
Before we could turn the gas off.
Yeah, and we burnt up a whole bunch of energy and things, you know, which then wasn't available. So, I mean, one of the most important things is how we learn something really useful from what's happened.
Yeah.
The worst mistake is not to learn anything from the mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is one of the things that I've written in the latest book is, you know, when a collaboration goes wrong. and there will be some that just aren't meant to work and just don't work. And the things that you're going to take from it is, well, what have I learned from this? And what learning am I going to take to move into the next collaboration? Because there will be another one, there'll be another one, there'll be another one. And you don't want to find yourself, history repeating itself. So if you're not going to be claiming systemic win for that situation, or at least systemic win from your perspective, then you're just going to be repeating those mistakes again and again.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we're doing is we're getting ready for people who actually say, I'd like to have a systemic win mediation rather than just a standard mediation. And yeah, it's just going to go better, because, I mean, you see, a very interesting thing about a conflict is, I think the only time a conflict is over is when things are better than they were before the conflict began. Now, how many conflicts do you know that you can honestly say that's the case? Very few, I would guess.
Yeah. I'm literally sitting here thinking, there's a difference, isn't it? There's a misunderstanding, there's a disagreement, but a conflict is that next level on that it's very hard to come back from. But yeah,
it's a bit like, there are some people who get divorced and actually they're still really good friends. But far more often, the two people get divorced and their kids suffer forever as the two of them don't really get on.
And they use them as pawns, don't they?
Yeah,
in the one-upmanship.
So one of the things in systemic win is actually how to help people take the conflict to the point where it's actually become a benefit. Which is really, I mean, conflict is probably one of the most expensive things we've got going on in our society at the moment. It's no fun. I mean, well, some conflicts are, but very few of them are. They're normally very stressful and consume time and energy, and and actually also stress your immune system, which is the last thing we need at this current time.
And on a purely practical note, they cost money as well, don't they? It's, generally it's going to cost you somewhere along the line. Financially,
are quite happy with it, and the courts are all well paid for it. But
and it's kind of stirred up that you need to have them, and it's such a shame. It's such a shame. So,
what do we completely failed to cover?
I'm just looking at my little list here. Yes. So we've more or less covered everything. I
wanted to put in, which is this thing about the team of three.
Yes.
Because I think you'll always have one person who's got some idea, who's got some inspiration, and they want to make it happen. No one can do anything of any complexity on their own. It's better when you've got support. So you need a second person who is going to support you, because he's actually maybe perhaps more practical than you and actually makes things happen. So you could say there's sort of a leader or follower sort of thing. But the thing is, once the follower has something that they're trying to do, the leader actually needs to become their supporter and enable them to do it. So the role keeps flipping.
Yeah.
And too often the leaders are a bit egoic and don't, they're not sort of servant leaders, which is one of the ones that really interests me. So you end up with a bit of a difficult dynamic. So that's where you need to have, I would say, the person who has a system awareness, who has a bigger awareness probably than the leader's got, and that's where they mediate. That's where they support the relationship between the leader and the follower as they sort of swap between who's leading and who's following. So this is where a core team of three who all have a system awareness, and you could say, and everyone should be able to step into all of the three roles.
Yes.
But that's one of the things I'm longing to create and find an organization that actually has that core of those three roles, and then each of those three roles, as you described, is supported. There's a leader, follower, system awareness in each of the roles. So, and we're doing that in the Collaboration Global, in our circles of collaboration. We're working that process.
Would you like to explain to people, for those that have never been to one of our meetings before, what happens in the collaboration circle and why it is such a pivotal part of what we do?
Right. So, well, first of all, it starts with one person talking about something that's important to them and giving a bit of background and discovering the sort of the dimensionality of who they actually are. And then they come to a circle with a question. Now, it's best if they actually come with their supporter, so that they actually have a conversation with their supporter facilitated by the systemic WIN facilitator. And then we've got 3 empty seats, so that we're having a witness conversation, and those around it who've got lots of knowledge and experience and understanding, they can come and join in the conversation. So they're not just asking questions or making comments, they're joining in an active dialogue. And that's how it works. And it seems to be incredibly rich, the information that gets shared, that people seeing parallels with their own life circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's just a fantastic collaboration and sort of a community spirit. And it's going to be very interesting to see how some of these projects actually start to unfold because of the support in the community.
Yeah, I mean, it's from my perspective, they've come from every space of, you know, I've got a dream. How's my dream gonna, you know, it's massive. I want to reach 1 billion people, down to I want to change my marketing, and we've got one coming up on our meeting tomorrow, and that's going to be around pursuing a new career and taking what they already do as something they love and turning it into a commodity that they can sell. So there is no there's no right or wrong. It's not about you come to a collaboration circle if you've got a conflict and we'll see if we can help you. It's bigger than that, because it's supported. And again, it's the magic number of 3 that you have going, because you've got the facilitator and you've got the supporter and you've got the person. So I've considered the magic 3 in Collaboration Global since as long as we had the ISO 44001, because I saw that in action, how those 3 started with 2 and it was clunky, and then we had the 3rd one and then it just blossomed. It just worked so well. So I understand that it's a very dynamic number, even in astrology, in so many different spiritual understandings. 3 is the divinity, you know. It's
let me give you another nice 3, which is the good, the true, and some people say the beautiful and some people say the useful.
Right.
I
think you're saying the good, bad and the ugly for a minute.
yeah, but you see it, particularly in these days where it's actually getting harder and harder to know what's true. You can say, well, I don't know if it's true. Is it good? Is it useful? I mean, you could say that if it's good, true, and useful, then it's probably beautiful.
Right.
So you see, you just got 3 into added another dimension. So that's where you've got a sort of a cube, another cube, a pyramid.
And again, the power of the pyramid, isn't it? The Egyptians and what they thought the power that held, and then all of the mathematical equations that come from it. It's just, there's something about it, isn't there? There's definitely something about the number 3 that creates something that when you're on your own, you have you've got your own system within you, and you know how to nurture your system. But your soul needs others to join it, and to bring other people in and create a bigger system, and understand that on your own, you can only go so far. It's like you're hitting a brick wall. You need to be able to have other people to give you a leg up to get over the wall.
Yeah, another way you could look at it is if you've got 2 people, well, the 3rd part is the relationship. I'm on my own, you're on your own. And so, you could, if you take the Christian thing of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, there's one element that's invisible. You could say the relationship between us is invisible. But it's actually almost the most important part of all of it. So,
and you have to work on that, don't you?
Exactly. So I think we're often missing the third part. Isn't normally out of our awareness, and actually bring it into the awareness, which is why the system awareness facilitator is so important, because it is actually bringing that 3rd role. It's naming it. It's bringing it into our awareness, and not having it floating there on just outside our awareness.
So how far are you in creating awareness of systemic WIN to a wider audience?
Oh, I'm pathetic at that. I'm an introverted philosopher type. You know,
Ah,
it's not the perfect setup for it. Um, and I've been cultivating various friendships, and I think we're just really looking for some opportunities where someone. Uh, it's really twofold. If you've got something that's really good, if you apply systemic win, it's going to even go even better. If you've
mm,
got something that's actually got a problem, systemic win is a phenomenal way of resolving conflicts and difficulties, and turning it from something that was a problem into an amazing opportunity.
so presumably, and I'm hedging my bets here, but would you, if somebody was watching this and they said, well, actually, I've got a dispute going on over there, or I've got a disagreement going on over there, and actually, I like what you're saying about systemic win, so that it can be a win for them and a win for me and a win for the situation that we all find ourselves in. Is that something that you would be able to kind of get involved with to guide them through the maze of finding out how to create that systemic win for them?
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, from all levels, from just the sort of theoretical, you know, this is what you could do,
Mm.
through to active support, and again within the system, within the Collaboration Global Network, there are lots of coaches who have sufficient understanding that if we're all working together on the framework, we'll be able to transform it very, very quickly.
Mm. It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? Because until people can look back and go, oh yeah, we worked on systemic win, this is the outcome, this is what's happened, then you can let more and more people know about it, can't you?
I mean, I'm currently in the classic thing, which is, sounds a great idea, where's the evidence? And I'm saying, well, that's exactly the opportunity I'm looking for. You know, but that's the hardest sell, because no one wants to be. I mean, I suppose I would say there's actually very little people who've got to lose.
Mm.
I can't imagine how you could make it worse using a systemic win approach. No. It's anything in where you've met it, you can see how it's actually made things worse. I just can't see it's going to.
No, I agree. Also, some people might be concerned about having to make themselves vulnerable in order to find the systemic win. I mean, if you imagine a majority of, say, business owners, if they've got a conflict in their management team or something, for them to have to work through systemic win, is it arduous? Would you say that it's something that they would have to be bearing their soul? Is it an emotional concept, or is it something that you feel is?
It's entirely a question of what the situation. If it's if everyone's already highly emotional, well, you're already being highly emotional, even if you're just being angry or whatever it is. And you know, what in systemic win we're always going to say is, let's find the value in it. Let's transform this bit so it becomes something that's useful rather than something that's undermining it. I mean, and that really is a absolutely fundamental part of it, is that however bad the conflict is, there is an opportunity to turn something useful out of it.
Yeah.
And the other side is, however well it's going, it could actually still go better. It could be more sustainable. It could be more efficient. Yeah. Well, that's what's so nice about it. You can use it anywhere on the spectrum, from being horrific in a horrific situation. If I come back to the coronavirus, one of the things at the moment, which is really, it's miserable. A whole lot more people are going to die than we're used to dying. But if we are in denial that those people are going to die, despite all our best efforts, actually more people are going to die than if we actually face it and say, how do we handle this as best possible? And I mean, one of my things is, I'm really interested, how do I live a life that gets better and better the longer that I live? And how do we all help each other do that? Because who wants to live a life that doesn't get better? Even you're getting old and frail. But at the end of it also, how do I die a good death? Because we are all going to die at some point. And you can either die really well, or you can die miserably. And we have a lot more choice in how we do that. And a lot of, but if we just say, oh, I'm not facing death, well, that's in some ways, that's part of the opportunity in this situation is, well, the great time to talk about it. I mean, I'm a funeral celebrant. I run funerals for people. My main thing is, how do they all live better because of the way that person has lived and died? Yeah, it's like that person's life was a gift, They made some mistakes, let's learn from them. They did some wonderful things, let's celebrate and copy it.
Yeah.
But like, we have so much opportunity to learn from each other, even in death. And you know, it's like the worst thing is there's what's the old saying? The hero dies one death, and the coward dies a million deaths, or whatever it is. You know, it is going to happen. Let's live life really well, so when it happens, we can say, right, that was good.
I think that's the thing that a lot of people hear about systemic win, and they think it's something that you need to do in order to make a bad situation better. Where in fact, if, as you say, if everyone were able to adopt this lifestyle, a conscious decision-making, gratitude-filled space, then your life, as you say, is going to get better and better and better. So you don't necessarily need to come to you for support on a conflict. It's about coming to you for support on living your individual life as well as your family life together, as well as your business life together. So if one person gets educated around what your teaching is of systemic win, then they take that to the next person, the next person, and the next person. And so it's like...
yeah, and you see, the absolutely core thing in it is, how do I react well so I help you react well, so you help me react? You know, it's like we can react well and it gets better for us and those around us. We can react badly. We've got to cut that circle of bad reactions. You know, it's you know, I mean, as humans, what humans do more than any other creature is try and improve the world around them. We could do so much more. We could have so much more fun helping each other improve everything. We don't need to do so much competition. We can actually make the competition much more interesting. And you see, I think I'd also say we tend to celebrate the winners. Actually, we probably should. But it's back to what we said with the World War II. We've actually ended up with an amazingly better world because Japan and Germany were supported. Even though they lost, it completely changed things. Now, we haven't looked after the environment as well as we should have, but we're only learning to look after the environment. We're really early days. I mean, for climate change, we really need systemic win if we're going to deal with that.
Yeah. So what would you do with climate change because of systemic? Where would you take it?
Well, the first thing is that, okay, we're going to get into deep trouble here.
Let's go there.
The first thing with climate change, we've all got to ask ourselves is, where should the carbon be?
Okay.
And if one looks back at the history of life on the earth, not life in the sea, soil is the answer. At one point, the earth was just bare rock, and all the water ran off it, but it washed a bit of nutrients into the sea, which is what fed all the life that was there. And then things started to colonize the earth, and when they died, the carbon was sticky, and it held the particles apart, and it held the water, and therefore, because the water was there for the things to live on, and gradually the soil covered apart from the frozen bits, covered everything. And all our life is based on soil and what grows out of the soil and what eats the stuff and all the animals that eat that. But it all comes back to we need to go back to creating soil. We know how to do that.
Right.
So we've got to stop digging up fossil fuels, but that's much less important than actually building soil and keeping rainforests and all that sort of thing.
Right.
And there's an amazing amount we can do to build soil. We've got to change our farming practices, but we could really seriously change around the climate change thing, and we wouldn't necessarily have to deprive ourselves, because the prospect, I've got to give up all my travel, I've got to give up all this and that, because it's all using carbon. If we were building soil, we'd be in a very, very different, if that was our focus, and we'd reclaim the deserts. Most of the deserts weren't desert.
Right.
The Sahara at one point, or part of the Sahara, was where all the grain was produced for the Roman Empire. It's a desert now.
Wow.
We actually do know how to turn it back into greenery, into grasslands. And there's amazing things that can be done, but they're always saying is just stop using stop using your car, stop going flying, all of that. Everyone's just, we're losing so much of things that we value. So, but systemic win, again, it's about how do we collaborate, because we've got to be able to disagree and be even better friends because we're disagreeing. It's natural to disagree. But it's so easy. We disagree, but that's disagreeable, and then they're a disagreeable person.
Yeah,
and then we're outside. We're going to ignore or compete with the person, and the whole collaboration, which is what you and I know is so important, that bit's been left out of it. We've got to be able to collaborate with people we disagree with.
Absolutely, and I can't understand where this space has been, where everyone on social media and things, is this disrespect, this everyone gets offended so easily, and it's like, that it's just so strange that we want to have free speech, but the minute somebody has free speech, everyone jumps on them and they're not allowed to say anything anymore. And we kind of need to be making our own mind up about a lot of the conversations that we hear at the moment. And it feels like people say, don't disrespect me. It's like, well, you have to earn respect. You have to be out there. And it's a different, the world what's happened is we are too busy infighting with, our social media than we are in finding the solutions and moving forward. And maybe that's why systemic win hasn't picked up, because people enjoy too much having conflict and enjoy too much having vitriol and being right. And
well, I suppose some of it is the whole thing of being able to be emotionally expressive. And even if it's just a negative emotion, it's better than not having any expression. But it's I just lost the thought there. So
okay.
Yeah. That was it. That was it. It was about this thing of taking offence. Years ago, I had this friend who was one of the Quaker elders where I live. I'm not a Quaker, but he said in us Quakers, we think it's a sin to take offence. It's actually it's not something you should be proud of. It's actually you're really completely not in a good place if you take offence. And if you think about it, when the Quakers were really active with all their social change, they obviously weren't liked. If they took offence, they'd have never been able to do anything. If you want to disempower yourself, take offence.
That's a really good phrase.
Great. Now you're less powerful because you're so busy being offended. You're really useful.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
Yeah, it's why would I want to be offended? I might be upset or challenged, but then I'd like your help.
Yeah, it's like, but I think we've been chatting away for the best part of an hour here, Paul. So I think it's given everyone a taster for what systemic win could create. It's also that on a global basis, but it's also given us an idea of excuse me, put my cup of tea down, on what it could create as an individual. If you just look at how your life is panning out, are you being offended by things that are actually nothing to do with you? Are you feeling stressed and impotent in the current coronavirus situation? Are you feeling upset with your nearest and dearest on a regular basis? Maybe if you view your life from a different lens and look at things in a slightly different way and consider how systemic win, if I have a conversation with my husband that makes him feel good as well as me feeling good, what would that look like for both of us moving forward? And as Paul said, in any relationship, there is the third space, the third seat of somebody, the relationship that is sitting there with potential systemic win overviewing, overseeing everything that you do. So could you adopt a systemic win stance, a systemic win philosophy, a systemic win awareness in your relationships, in your family, in your business? And if that's something that you're interested in and you would like to know more, if we have sparked your curiosity around something that Paul has been researching and reviewing and building and writing about for the best part of 20 years, Paul? So there's an awful lot of knowledge sitting right here in this wonderful interview that we've been able to scratch the surface of to help you understand that potentially systemic win can stop wars, potentially systemic wind can help us in situations like coronavirus. But on a purely practical level, and from my own personal experience, it can help you in a conflict situation where you think it's this or this, and actually it can be mushroomed into so much more that we hadn't even considered in the first place. So if people want to contact you, Paul, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Just send me an email, which is long and simple, paul@paulbakerandcompany.co.uk. That's one very long word spelt out in full.
AND, brilliant. Thank you very much. And we'll pop that onto the post as well for the podcast so you can connect up with Paul. I would thoroughly suggest you do that. If you wanted to, you could come on to one of our online meetings. We do have them face-to-face, but obviously not at the moment. We do have online meetings. If you go to collaborationglobal.org, you will find all of the details there. And quite often, Paul will be on one of those meetings, so you can definitely connect with him, or come on to our platform as well, which is collaborationglobal.mn, and you'll be able to find us on the Mighty Network as well, and he's a member there, so you can connect with him various different ways. And hopefully we have sparked your interest in systemic wind, something that is as valuable as gravity has been to our universe. Just imagine what that might be like if systemic wind was known around the planet, what difference that would make to how we live our lives and how we can utilize and create systemic wind for everyone, for the planet included, as well as us as human beings. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, Paul, as well, for being a part of this conversation. I'm sure we'll have part 2 in the not too distant future. Thank you for joining me here on Collaboration Global.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
very much. Take care. Bye.